time for RTB 101, where we discuss practical questions to equip you to share your faith more effectively. And here to talk about one of my favorite science topics, the miracle of the moon, is my colleague, Dr. Hugh Ross. Welcome, Hugh.
Well, thank you.
I love this topic.
I do too.
Well, we're going to have fun together. So maybe let's start with Scripture. Give us a few points of what Scripture has to say about the moon.
It doesn't say a whole lot. I mean, you got that reference in Genesis chapter 1. You know, how God created the sun, moon, and stars and made them all visible on the fourth day to us, for what he did with the atmosphere.
It helps us mark time,
Right.
is another thing Scripture says, I think.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, mark seasons, days, and years. And you got a couple of references in the Psalms.
Okay.
That's pretty much it.
Okay.
No, wait a minute. There's also references in Joel and Revelation.
That's
That
true.
talks about in the future that the color and the light will be dimmed.
Okay. So the Bible mentions the moon, but it doesn't give us a ton of detail about it. So then we move into the record of nature and we start digging in and being curious. What role does the moon play in helping to sustain life on Earth?
Well, there'd be no life on Earth at all if it wasn't for the moon. I
That's
mean,
remarkable to me. Yeah.
And so, and you need the Earth-Moon system to be just right for it to happen. You need a small planet orbited closely by a big moon, and one moon, not more than one.
Okay, so certain parameters related to size and distance. What role does the moon then play in helping to sustain life? I don't think that's going to be immediately obvious to a lot of people.
Well, one thing that's been known about for several decades is having this big moon orbiting closely a small planet stabilizes the rotation axis tilt of the planet. So for example, you've got Mars, which doesn't have any big moon around it. Its rotation axis tilt goes back and forth by 60 degrees. Ours goes back and forth by between 22.1 and 24.5 degrees, plus or minus 1.2 degrees, that's all.
So that stability then has an effect on the planet so that complex life forms like you and I can be able to live there.
It stabilizes the climate. I mean, if you got the rotation axis tilt doing this, the climate's going to so radically change. You might have microbes on the planet, but you're not going to have plants, animals, and humans.
Now, the moon also helps to, I think, regulate the tides.
It does, yes, because it's close enough to us that it causes sufficient tidal interaction, and that actually causes life to proliferate on the continental shelves. And the moon is big enough and massive and close enough that it slows down our rotation axis, or rotation period. Keep in mind now, when the Earth and the moon were young, Earth had a rotation rate of about 2 or 3 hours a day. And when it's that rapid, you're not going to have a climate that's going to be conducive for the whole planet. And it was crucial. 24 hours is optimal for humans. 25 is a problem, 23 is a problem, 24 is just right. And there's a window in which we humans can exist on Earth, and a very narrow time window, and the moon got us to 24 hours a day, right smack in that time window.
So the moon almost acted like a set of brakes to slow down the Earth.
It's still operating that way.
Okay.
Right.
Now, you wrote a blog post recently about how the moon's early magnetic field made human existence possible. Tell us about that.
Not only our existence, but all life possible. There wouldn't even be microbes on the planet if this wasn't the case. And the moon right now has no magnetic field, but measurements that have been made by astronauts and astrophysicists basically tells us when the moon was young, it had a strong magnetic field. Because of the way it formed as a result of a collision with the proto-Earth, it had a hot liquid iron core. Now that by itself won't get you a magnetic field. You got to find some way of sloshing around that liquid iron core. But it formed at a point where it was much closer, only 18 moon diameters away from the Earth, which meant the tidal forces of the Earth circulated that liquid iron and gave it a magnetic field. Likewise, the moon was close enough to the Earth because at that time, the Earth didn't have a solid core. It was liquid all the way through. And it was the moon being close enough to the Earth that circulated the liquid iron in Earth's core, which meant both bodies had a strong magnetic field when the system was less than 1 billion years old. And it took the coupling of that magnetic field to produce a coupled magnetosphere that prevented the sun from blasting away all of our atmosphere and water. Because at that point, the sun was throwing out radiation that literally would have wiped out our ocean and wiped out our atmosphere. This coupled magnetosphere prevented that from happening. We don't need the moon today because the sun is a lot less of a problem now than it was when the Earth-Moon system was young. And moreover, there's a new source of convection in the interior of the Earth now that it has a solid core as well as a liquid core. So everything timed out just right.
So we not only need a just right planet, we need a just right moon, and formed in just the right time, in just the right way.
You
for
need
all
the
to
just
work.
right dynamics throughout the entire history, otherwise our planet would be totally barren of life.
That's so good, because I don't think we often reflect on kind of that interdependent nature of things. We just kind of take it for granted. And the moon really is a miracle. It is God's miracle for us.
Well, we only talked about 3 of the 20.
I know.
There's more.
There's so many more. So thank you for helping us think through this topic. Go check out Hugh's blog post. You can search for it at Today's New Reason to Believe.